perfect.
Okay.
Here we go. Live.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum to everyone watching. Welcome back to AccidentalMuslims.com. So today we have with us Sister Zainab Chirwa.
Yes.
Chirwa, okay. And with me is Zahir interviewing as well. We haven't seen you
Yeah,
for a
Salam
while.
alaikum. It's been a while. So did you know Zainab's surname? Or is it Taonga Chonga? Is that your surname or is it part name? Or?
Taonga is my name,
Okay.
and Chirwa is my
And
surname.
it means thank you. I learned that book.
Yes.
It's like gratitude on that.
Gratitude, yes. My paternal grandmother gave me that name.
Okay, that's
Yes.
amazing.
Beautiful.
Yes, yes,
Beautiful.
So we're gonna just go right into it and ask who is Zainab.
Wow.
First question.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all the listeners. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wow, that's such a broad question. I often struggle putting myself. I don't think anyone can use like one word or phrase to describe who they are. But I'd simply say I think I'd like to describe myself as somebody who, alhamdulillah, has been blessed with so much love by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'm just simply just trying to spread a lot of that into the world. And yeah, I'm just trying to do my part, trying to leave it a better place than I found it. That's Zainab. So if you see me anyway, just say hi. I'm cool.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your childhood. Originally, you said you are
I'm from Zambia.
from Zambia. So a little bit about growing up and how it led you to kind of where you are now.
Well, okay. So I was born in Zambia. It's a country in Southern Africa, just above Zimbabwe. And I was born to two parents, to Robert Rashid Chirwa and Habiba Martha Biziwe Chirwa. I have three siblings, sorry. And I moved to South Africa when I was 8 years old with my parents and my siblings. And yeah, so I've been living here. We relocated to Pietermaritzburg in
Okay.
KZN. That's where I've essentially grown up. I went to, I was in grade 4 when I arrived, so I went to Muslim school there. That was my primary school, and then my high school was, I went to Maritzburg Muslim School for Girls. Amazing place, amazing experience, amazing teachers who have just really contributed tremendously to my growth and just a lot of learning. And then I went to Rhodes University. That's where I did my BA in legal theory and geography. I was in Grahamstown, again, phenomenal people, environment, and yeah, I found myself at Medina back in 2017. I did also the Dean program there for a year, and I just Cape Town back bit, and I decided to stay here. I met amazing people here in Cape Town, and just really as a woman as well, in terms of like access to learning the Dean, and there's just so much that the town offers. As a young Muslim person, and being open to this new world of Islamic scholarship, it's just blew my mind. It had always been a dua that that Allah grants me the opportunity really to learn His Deen and to seek the knowledge. I mean, I already had been seeking knowledge in general, but specifically also as well in terms of the Deen in itself, in terms of like the Quran and Hadith, and also being guided by people who who have dedicated their lives to studying this beautiful Deen. So yeah, alhamdulillah, and I find myself at UCT. But that doesn't mean I'm defined by my education, but
Yes.
it's just an easy way
it's a
of
journey.
of tracking my journey.
So if I could, what did you say? BA Legal Theory and Geography.
And geography.
Okay, I've never heard that before.
Yeah,
I'm being very honest with
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe tell me what that is. That's my first question.
Sure.
And then I'll follow it up with a second one after that. So
Okay. So as far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Going back to before I started preschool, I was just thinking this afternoon, my Uncle Yusuf Mbeva, he's the one who taught me how to write my name, and he would teach me the first nasheed I ever heard. He would sing it to me in Tumbuka, my mother tongue, and translate it into English. And really, I think I definitely have to also just like honor him in terms of he really like helped in terms of grow that love for Allah and just his Deen. So anyway, and then he told me, Zainab, looking at how you are, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, I don't know. I was like 4 or 3. I'm very hazy. I don't know how old I was, but all I know, I wasn't in school yet. And then he's like, you should be a lawyer. And I'm like, what is that? And I think we were watching a TV program or something. And he told me, like, do you see that person? This is what they do. If you're going to be a change maker, you're going to try, you should do something into the world. create an impact, a change in the world. And I think this is a career path that would be great for you. And I was like, wow, really? People can do that? And yeah, and so that's what I've always said. I'm going to be a lawyer, and I think it just translates into my personality as well. I'm fascinated by society, people. Why do people behave the way they do? And I've come to learn that rules really, and law plays a huge role in that, and regulating that, and also in terms of like just organizing society. So when I went to Rhodes, initially I just wanted to study law, and they don't have a straightforward like LB program. You have to do like an undergraduate degree and then do with some law, with some LB courses, and then you graduate with your undergrad, and then you do your 2 years of LB to complete it up. So long journey. I started off doing a BSOC Sci my first year, still doing legal theory. That was my major, in anthropology. And then I dabbled in anthropology and politics and English as well my first year. Second year I was bored. It felt like redundant. Classes were just so redundant. I then moved to a BSc in legal theory and environmental science in my second year. I was trying to find my way, trying to find where it is that but I knew that I wanted to do law. But it's always been important to me that I enjoy what I do, because I feel like it really informs your why. Your why is important in life. And if you're not passionate about what you do, it's very difficult for you to be disciplined and to stick it through and to hold yourself accountable. Eventually, I ended up just changing my whole degree due to a lot of logistics, just doing a BA in legal theory. I didn't change my majors per se, but just the name essentially. And I ended up graduating with a BA in legal theory and geography. I have varied interests, so the science and the law just really helped me balance me as a human being, and I loved it. I loved the journey, the trajectory. It was amazing.
So you're currently at UCT now?
Yes.
What you doing there per month?
I'm doing my LLB now.
The LLB now,
yes.
Okay, fine. So, interesting question, Aisha. It's not a question to you, it's a statement to you, but it's actually a question to you. In recent weeks, we've had a few young ladies, professionals, academics, so to speak, but it seems that they're also prioritizing the deen, which is quite refreshing. What's your take on that? Muslim females, educated, changing the narrative with how they approaching Islam, in fact.
And maybe even like with tying to that, your time at Medina Institute and how they contributed.
Wow. I can't help but think. I think it starts with our moms, I'd like to think, but for me anyway, even in Islam it says, every child's first madrasa is, a mother's lap, and alhamdulillah, both my parents really nurtured that love for Allah and for His Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and just, the deen. And growing up in Zambia, where we're a small minority, and particularly being a black Zambian Muslim person, it was a very rare thing. I remember in preschool walking back from madrasa at 4 o'clock with my small white abaya and my small white burqa, and the kids would be screaming, Muhammad, Muhammad, and they'll be laughing, It wasn't, I don't think it was like, it was a taunt, but also it was just like they found it hilarious, and they were confused, and, But anyway, I think with that really, and just the madrasa environment, alhamdulillah, my parents raised me in a very conscious environment in Islam, alhamdulillah, that's grounded me. And so growing up, I knew that there was never a separation between my Islam and who I was. So, going back to the beginning of the interview, my purpose cannot be fulfilled without me fulfilling as well my deen, and that, and going back to the first ayah that's revealed, Iqra, and seeking that and seeking all forms of knowledge. So I think that's what we're all just coming for. I think we're being given more opportunities. I don't think it's anything new. I've had this conversation at Medina with a fellow of my female fellow colleagues, student colleagues, and we talked about how we always wonder, like, why don't we ever hear a lot about female scholars, of which we have so many in our Islamic history, so many female scholars, even now currently in the world, for some very varied reasons, many reasons. Obviously they don't get that much exposure and so forth. That's a whole other conversation. But I think for now, the fact that, places like Medina Institute, places like Darul Naim here, places like the Zahra Institute and so forth, who are giving opportunities to Muslim women, to follow this path, which is so blessed, alhamdulillah, and to do this. I think we're all just grabbing it. All of us make dua for this opportunity, and we just pray that Allah, inshallah, facilitates for us to do that. So I think it's nothing complicated.
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your podcast that you are going.
Yes. It's a baby, it's the grey.
Okay.
And in our first season, we're experimenting by essentially one of the co-founders of Mkutano podcast, African podcast. It's myself and a couple of other students at UCT from different departments. We're not friends. I only know the one guy. He's like a friend of a friend, and we just connected through our love of literature, of reading, and particularly of African literature. As a young Black Muslim woman, I've always been interested and very particular about representation, the importance of representation. And because I love literature and reading, I've always loved like being able to read a book and being able to relate to characters in the book. I think that has also helped me in my journey. So I think we wanted to just create more awareness and platforms where we discuss this and give exposure to authors who are writing African literature, and also just breaking down what is African literature, because I don't think none of us knew exactly what that meant. Does it just mean that because you're African, then whatever you write is African literature? Is it even a genre? I don't think so, but that's a whole other conversation. So check out Mkutano African podcast. When season 1, we're discussing essentially the background, talking to publishers and so forth, people behind the teams, a bit of some authors and so forth. And we're about to close up season 1, so just have a look at that. We also have a literature review which I wrote on Kanisha Mohammed. She's a Cape Malay Muslim woman here, based here in the Western Cape. She wrote a book called Call to Song, an amazing piece of work. Kanisha Mohammed is the name. Please pick it up at your local bookstore. Amazing. Yeah.
Okay. So talking about exposure, and as of recent weeks, there's been, I know one of your passions, and speaking about one of them, is the gender-based violence issues and those things going forward. How did that become a passion of yours? And maybe even speak to us a little bit about your thoughts about the recent events.
I think being a woman growing up in the world, even more so in South Africa, you cannot help but identify with the current conversations that we've been having. It's not an episode. It's not a once-off thing. It's our lives. You can talk to any woman, ask any woman, and they'll tell you about the numerous encounters of violence that is constantly perpetrated towards women. And for me, as somebody who, as being a Muslim, and the fact that my deen propagates peace and salam, and so forth, any form of violence or disturbance of peace, it becomes my duty to speak out against it and to stand for the haqq. And particularly, just reference to yesterday, it was the day of Ashura and so forth, of the numerous occasions in terms of that, what we commemorate on that day as well. We remember Imam Hussein radiallahu anhu and what he stood, for the haqq and for the truth and justice. So I think it's I believe personally that it's obligatory for me, if I have any form of a voice or platform, that I should speak out against this. We cannot continue it. We cannot continue as normal. We are in a crisis. It's not a new thing. It's always been there. We're tired. We're being killed. We don't want to be raised. And and everybody listening right now, I think all of us, let's check ourselves, check those around us. Men in particular, be accountable. There's nobody who's exempt from this. Violence starts from a micro level, from small aggressions, microaggressions to macroaggressions. We're not just talking about serial killers or violent rapists and or women beaters. No, it's starting from the home, starting with the relationships with your siblings, with your sisters, with your friends, with your with your partner, at work, everywhere. Let's check ourselves.
So, with regards to that, what is your advice, or what would you say, what is the bare minimum that we can do as women, and then even more so as the men out there in the society? What is it that we could do in assisting?
I think as women we're doing a lot. There's nothing more we can do that we're not doing already. And if anything, we're doing more than we should be doing. For me, I think it's important that we speak to perpetrators, and that is men. Particularly since we're talking right now, the spotlight is on violence against women. I acknowledge that violence does happen to all people from all genders and so forth, but particularly we're looking at gender-based violence against women, you know. So I think men are the ones supposed to be doing things. It's not us. How can a victim be told that we can't? I'm a victim. You're a victim. How do men view? Men need to question themselves. How do they view women in relation to themselves, and what informs that view in particular? And how is it that in their interactions with women, can they truly say that they are just in their engagements? Do they interact on a level, on a platform of you're a human being and you know you have the right to dignity and have to respect your dignity in the same manner that my dignity is always respected and you know it's always maintained? It needs serious interrogation. I know we're tired of the rhetoric of shouting, screaming. We're tired of crying. It's exhausting. It's obvious at one point, you know, I could say sometimes it feels like doesn't mean a thing. It's serious interrogation amongst men, conversations within themselves, you know. And you cannot say I'm the exempt one, I'm the exemplary, because I am very sure you have people around you who you see constantly perpetuating violence and you don't speak up about it. Because why? You don't get involved in other men's businesses, you know. So I think from a micro level, that's why I can speak of this conversation. So this question, you know, requires a lot of time to go into depth. Yeah. But for now, all I can say is that personal introspection and accountability, and particularly in terms of government and leadership, and even my profession that I want to enter, the legal profession, we need to seriously look at in terms of the law and how how perpetrators are comfortable in knowing that they can get away with what they do.
Yeah, tell me.
Yes.
This conversation about gender-based violence has been around for years. I'm an optimist by nature. But some people, I've been hearing over the past week, it's not going to change, it's been entrenched in our society and our mindsets. So let me put it to this way. 5 years' time,
yes.
This big campaign is at the moment. Let's look forward 5 years' time.
Yes.
If we look back 5 years' time to today, what do you think would be progress or success coming out of this current narrative?
Yes.
What would you like to maybe see in the next few years as a tangible change or something like that?
Yes, I'm encouraged by when I see a lot of initiatives and programs, people that have been doing work who have been doing work with this particular issue in society. There's an organization that I work with, the Center for Peace and Non-Violence, which is also part of Medina Institute, that have an annual Orange the World. It's called the Orange the World Youth Summit. And it essentially brings together high school learners from all over the Western Cape as much as possible, from as many schools as possible. And you bring young people to the summit, and I've been astounded at the hope that lies in these young people. Because I feel like, people always say that, there's children are the future, and really having such platforms and moments where we talk about this conversation, because the theme is the fight, creating awareness against gender-based violence. And for me, my hope in 5 years, in terms of all the young people that we've worked with over the three annual summits that we've had, that they will enter society and they will impact change. I think continuing work that this organization, other organizations across the board that are doing, for me, my hope is that slowly but surely we'll start changing mindsets. It's very difficult to change mindsets of adults, but in terms of our young people, I think it gives me a lot of hope. And we can see that in terms of the responses across universities in South Africa over the past 2 weeks. Standing up to authority and saying no is no, we cannot continue. It is not normal. Students have really shown us time and time again over the past 5-7 years that they are invested in changing society, and they're optimists and that we want to create a change. And I'm excited to see these young individuals get into society and really do bigger things. So for me, my hope is just really seeing where these students and these young people are going to go further in 5 years' time.
Nice. That's brilliant. Another thing that you said, you're from Zambia.
Yes, I'm from Zambia.
So you may or may not know, Zambia recently cancelled a football match against South Africa.
Yes,
so you know where I'm heading with that now.
Yes,
where I'm going to take the conversation. The next part of your blurb on our poster was gender-based violence xenophobia.
Yes,
So we don't hold any grudges against the cancellation, but no, let's talk about xenophobia. I mean, it just happens to be you are from Zambia.
Yeah, no, thank you again for allowing me to speak on this. This is a very personal struggle as well, particularly because I am, like I mentioned at the beginning of this seating, that I am an immigrant from Zambia, and it really breaks my heart because, you know, what could I really feel like the problem is with how particularly African migrants are seen and viewed by leadership, and the rhetoric that has been passed, that has been created over a long time around African migrants is the reason why we are where we are today. Because when I think of the several rhetorics and the reasoning behind the xenophobic attacks of saying that, you know, foreigners are taking jobs, and that, you know, foreigners are the ones who are selling drugs to young people and so forth. And indeed, there are foreign nationals who are involved in this, and this is an issue of crime. That's what it is. It's not an issue of immigration or that we cannot regulate. And even I know there's, you know, people are talking about the government needs to have more stricter immigration laws and so forth. I think that's one of the biggest problems. The South African government doesn't have serious proper policies, and they haven't thought beyond how to deal with mass economic migrants from the African continent in particular. And that is why we find ourselves where we are today, you know, and because there also hasn't been, South Africa during apartheid in particular was closed off from other countries, from other African countries. And after 1994, you had an influx of people from other African countries, and they're seen as the other, the different. We don't know these people. And so as human beings, the moment we see somebody who's different, we're afraid and we go on the defense, and, you know, that's where a whole lot of misconceptions and people attack each other. I think we really need to do more in terms of educating each other about who we are. I mean, so many times growing up, I'd say I'm from Zambia, people wouldn't know where that country is, and I'll be shocked, you know, because I mean we're neighbors. We for me growing up, I always knew about South Africa. We have a shared history, a very close shared history, a very intimate shared history, you know. Zambian lives were fought during apartheid as well, in terms of in our bid to support the South African cause and movement. And that is not a reason for us to say, oh, don't kill us because we helped you during apartheid. No, don't kill us simply because we're human. If you're going to say that they are criminals, this is a crime issue, it means the South African police services and the government needs to have a crackdown on criminality and all forms of crime. You know, if this is an issue of economics and unemployment, it means it's an issue in terms of our economic policies and how our economic structures are designed, and they're addressing disadvantaged communities and historical disadvantage. And why is it that Black South Africans in particular find themselves in the situation that they are in? So I think this conversation is bigger than us, and people tend to minimize it and to really just. I think we need to know. We need at the base and the foundation. We need to learn more about each other, and I think at the end of the day we'll all have the same conversation. You ask any migrant, and they will tell you any migrant who's here genuinely to commit as an African. We're not. You shouldn't be. If you're here to come and commit crime, then you have no right to. This is no place for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of migrants here who are here to contribute and who contribute to this economy. I can think on the top of my hand of amazing people that have done amazing contribution to South Africa, from your Bisim Tawarira in terms of the South African rugby team, to your Ray Pearies, you know, a legendary musician in South Africa, to, you know, Zambian soccer players who have come here and have entertained us, you know, Collins Mbesuma, Chansa, your Knowledge Msona. I mean, I can go on when it comes to football in terms of that. They have really, you know, any Pirates, Kaizer Chiefs fans, Swallows, Bloemfontein Celtic, you know, we know these people. They have contributed to the passion of this country and have contributed to entertainment on Saturdays.
So I like the fact that I like football. Oh. Fine, you know that by now. Now you're mentioning all these names, and for me what perplexes me is the two things you mentioned, one is they come here to steal our jobs. That's the one narrative. The other one is jealousy for some reason. Now, education plays a big part in, and I'm not talking just school education. I'm just talking about education generally. Like you said earlier, mother is the first madrasa. So whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, the mother is the first point of education for any society. Father as well, support, family, community. Now, does the solution lie with a change in policies from government, or do we start in our living rooms?
In our living rooms, I think it would be great if we could start in our living rooms. But the problem lies in that our own parents also have uninformed and have very warped ideas and notions of other Africans, particularly Black Africans, because in terms of the xenophobia, it's very targeted to Black African migrants. So it starts there. And I think in terms of like what we watch and what is shown to us on television and so forth, our popular soapies, where you're always shown as whenever you see a character who's a foreign national, they are oftentimes a criminal, or they don't have papers and so forth. Very rarely will we be shown positive pictures of Black African migrants. And I think it starts so from all work sectors, I guess you could say, in terms of whether it's from the creative industry, from sports, from government in and of itself. I think it starts there, and I've seen a video on Instagram of South African musicians coming together and speaking up, I guess, which, big ups to them of using their platform or as artists, to come up to be like, look, we collaborate with our fellow Africans, all the time, and we're entertaining you and so forth. So,
what's frustrating under this situation as well is we all go to service stations, petrol stations, and the guys that fill our petrol tanks up, most of them are African migrants. And what the sad thing is, if you actually just talk to them, you get doctors, you get engineers, you get academics, you get artisans, and I feel it's just such a waste of potential in terms of how they could possibly build our communities as well, our society. So that's a frustrating part. Would you share that sentiment? How do you Zainab, view that sort of sort of point, I can put it that way.
Yes, I think that really, again, like I said, I think this problem is bigger than just South Africa and bigger than just your normal things. It just goes back to the state of our continent. As a continent, it would be a lie to say that we have recovered from colonialism and so on. And we need to take also ownership in terms of our leaders have failed us post-colonialism. Our leaders have failed us, they have failed their people, and that's how you find a lot of African migrants all over the world, not just in South Africa, but all over the world. In the diaspora, we have lost huge potential, like you said. We have so many problems in Africa, and you find that we keep turning and looking to the West for solutions, as though we don't have people who have the means and the resources and who can, not necessarily the means and the resources, but who have the capacity intellectually in terms of human resource to impact change and to turn around our societies and to truly realize our potential as a continent, as an economic giant in the world. And that's where it comes back to. I think to say that it's only the responsibility of the South African government, personally for me, I think that is a very unfair thing. I think it goes back to where people have come from as well. Our governments, I know, from other African countries, really, they have failed us. People have just enriched themselves, and we have elections oftentimes they are rigged and they're compromised and so forth. There's no accountability, genocides, civil wars, divide and conquer all over the show for various reasons. I think this is a question that as a continent we need to ask ourselves, to be like, and once again I am encouraged that I have met amazing young African people who have great visions for this continent, and I like to believe I'm in platforms such as this as well, the fact that this is something that you guys created, AccidentalMuslims, where we find ourselves, you all the way from South Africa and I'm all the way from Zambia, that Allah made it such that we meet and have this conversation together. This is, I think, if we could come together more and build, cannot begin to imagine where we would see ourselves as a continent.
As Muslims, I must be honest. I know sometimes we we say not. A lot of people criticize ulama not speaking up on certain topics. But this past Friday, I always see various masajid spoke up on gender-based violence and on xenophobia. And I think one of the pertinent reminders again is, and I think it might be apt just to pause and reflect. When you were at Medina Institute, you probably touched on Sirah. And as we know, the Sirah, as was reminded to us, is that our most noble of prophets, subhanAllah, was a migrant. And I think that, again, Islam is all-encompassing, provides us solutions to societal problems. Came to perfect character, so to speak. Maybe touch on that aspect in relation to these two topics which we...
Sure, subhanAllah, ya Allah, may Allah guide me and inshallah facilitate that any mistake I make is from me and not from Allah, inshallah, and I'll do for my very limited. I am by no point saying that I'm an expert or I know much, but Bismillah, I really, it's again subhanallah for the gift of iman and then for this deen really. And I think once again we don't appreciate how much we can draw from the seerah, and that was one of my favorite subjects actually, going back to Medina. And we had an amazing teacher in Sheikh Genie Waist, who's just did a stellar job in teaching seerah. And if there's anything I learned, because I went to madrasa like most people, and you learn. I'll just start from there. As a child, as a young child, we used to call it stories of the Prophet in madrasa, and it was just a story really. I mean, you'd learn about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is what happened, and so and for you would just be learning, oh, this is what happened, okay, I need to know. You memorize and you regurgitate, you write exams, you get a stellar, you get an award, and that's that. But you don't really do you don't do tadabbur on the seerah itself and the beauty of it on that moment. And alhamdulillah, jazakallah again for this moment of talking about migration. I can't help but think about when Nabi when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam arrived in Medina. Immediately, there were the Ansar of Medina who were there to welcome the Muhajirin, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam paired people up. There's huge symbolism in that, that it's important that when you have, and then I'll touch on that, and then let me just bring something else, and then I'll bring it back together, and then just talking about the importance of guests in Islam. How as a Muslim, you have they have a right over you. How there's huge emphasis on hospitality, and that pairing that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that you act as protectors and you work together, and the Ansar welcomed them with open arms, and they work together and they built and that is how we have the Mubarak city of Medina Munawwara, where we go back there and we learn so much. And so for us, I think to go back and to just ask ourselves, whenever we encounter migrants, why are we selective as to who we open our arms to and who we do not open our arms to? I go back to a conversation I've had recently with my fellow South African friends, of which South Africa is home for me. I've spent more than half my life here, and in South African tourism adverts you'll see, South Africa, it's a rainbow nation, and South Africans are warm and they're friendly and so forth. And I remember saying, as an African migrant, I've never felt welcomed. I've never felt this warm and friendliness that you talk about. When my migrant status is put in the forefront as a black migrant, and I've spoken to many other black migrants. Very rarely do we, more often than not, we often feel fear. And so for me, my question is, you're African, I'm African. Where is the bond that is being? Why is it we're selective in terms of only showing this warmness to Western or European migrants only? Doesn't that just perpetuate this violence? It's not only a violence towards other African migrants, but it's also a violence as to a black South African person as well, to yourself, a serious self-hate. I think that's a conversation that we need to have in our own communities and in our own circles, and really look at that and take responsibility. Leaders in our community, in our country, who have made very disturbing, very dangerous remarks, very xenophobic remarks. You hold a huge role and a huge role. You need to be responsible. You need to do better. And as Muslims, we all know our Muslim community here is very diverse. Most African, the South African, black South African Muslim population is growing, mashallah. but it doesn't. Alhamdulillah, it's amazing whenever I see that. But most of the time, for the longest time, historically, in terms of the Muslim community, a lot of the black Muslims have been migrant Muslims, you know. And when we talk about in terms of relations between black migrant Muslims and your genuine, whether it's your Cape Malay or whether it's your Indian or Pakistani Muslim community in South Africa, very tense relations, very almost like master subservient relations. We have taken economics and used that also economics to dictate how we also relate to each other in terms of the deen space in the masjid. You know, in the South, when you're in the masjid about to make salah, the imam will often say, you know, stand ups, you know, stretching the softs, toe to toe, shoulder to shoulder. Subhanallah, where do we hear that? Where do we hear that? That just before you're about to make salah, before you're about to have that moment with your Allah, that you're told again, even in that moment, you're asked, as much as it is solitary, but you're also asked to unite. And yet you have people all of a sudden shifting, not wanting to go and fill us off because why there's a black brother there, there's a black sister there, and I don't want to stand you, or you smell, or you know, these are the remarks. I have a 15, 16-year-old brother who tells me this is almost his daily experience, you know, in masjids. And that breaks my heart, because now what do you do to a young person's perception of the masjid experience? The moments where he'll be like, you know what, I'd rather not go to the masjid and just make my salah here. And it's like, no, you know, you're there's more sawab when you go and make salah in Jamaat. It's just like, I don't like it. I just feel it's not comfortable. And what can I say? What can I tell him otherwise? Do you understand? So I think really, as Muslims as well, in terms of our own, xenophobia is not a thing that we just see. It doesn't mean that xenophobic attacks only happen when people shoot and throw trucks and it's what we see in videos. But let us introspect in our own communal spaces, how we interact with each other. So, yeah.
Then if you, sorry Aisha, then we can actually appreciate in the masterstroke of our noble prophet when he actually paired up Ansar Muhajirin to eliminate the other syndrome. SubhanAllah. I mean, I spoke to myself first, but pertinent reminders here, Aisha. Pertinent. Something which we as a community should reflect on quite strongly. SubhanAllah. Just take a moment to pause here, unless you have something else to say.
I think it's very important we don't always, because we speak about it, and it's often with this it's often we speak about without the actual people speaking about themselves. And we speak forward rather than without that inclusivity. So it's so important this conversation there. But I'm like, you can see, emotional, because like I think we don't consider the hurt and what it actually causes to an entire community.
Yes, I mean, I'm not trying to say that it's a very difficult thing to say, but I know way too many young Muslim migrant people who have lost their way in the deen as well, because they just feel like I don't want to be part of a community that my existence is seen as almost like a plague, like I am delegitimized as a human being and so forth, and especially as something as delicate as faith for young people. You know, there's a lot of things that we're fighting, that we're struggling with, and when you go into the one space in the masjid where you seek solace, where you seek support and strength, renewal, rejuvenation, spiritual rejuvenation, where you're told, you're an ummah, what you love for yourself, you love for your brother or your sister, and so forth. We hear Quranic ayahs saying that Allah only judges human beings only by their taqwa, and that's it. And it's just like, and it's not, so especially as young people again who don't necessarily have had the opportunity to truly understand that people are not necessarily a reflection of the end, which I don't like that narrative, because it makes people absolve themselves of taking responsibility of their actions. That is not an excuse. That thing of don't judge Muslims because Muslims are not a reflection of the end. Astaghfirullah, we should be ashamed of ourselves if we are saying that. If you have the shahada, you should be reflecting that at all times, including myself.
So again, I'm gonna ask the same about the gender-based violence. What can I do? What can when it comes to xenophobia and it comes to just into action, whatever it is? What can we do differently to change the narrative?
Change the narrative about both genocide, xenophobia. I think again going back to we need to reintroduce ourselves to one another. We don't know each other. We genuinely don't know each other because we often tend to put the aesthetic, the outer before we tend to make assumptions and judgments of a person, and we've already decided how we're going to interact with somebody before we've gotten to know the person, the human behind that person. And even often, perhaps it could be, controversial as well, but, I think even in terms of how we, going back to Sira, and in terms of how often we've been made to understand and to interpret and to even to explain the deen, and in terms of like Islamic scholarship and the interpretation of things to an extent, not necessarily that, but in terms of how we understand like the importance of Sira as well, like where we place importance and where we don't place importance, where we place a spotlight and where we don't place a spotlight. I think we really need to re-educate ourselves. Blackness did not start with Bilal radiallahu anh, please. Islam in Africa did not come now in the 1900s. Please, let's educate ourselves. There's a book. It's an imperative on you as a Muslim person. Fulfill it. And it's a call to myself as well. We're constantly learning. So I think we really need, and talk to each other. Actually speak. There's so many black migrant scholars, Islamic scholars in this country, subhanAllah, that we do not tap in, who are just often relegated to the role of imam and so forth, with rich, knowledge and so forth, that we are never given the respect and the support in terms of encouraging their scholarship as well. Those are conversations, even in terms of, as black Muslims as well, like, I think we also need to stand up to the occasion and get to know Islam and our history, because nobody's going to teach it to you. You need to be proactive and you need to have agency in that conversation, which is happening, alhamdulillah. So,
SubhanAllah. Thank you for sharing this. I mean, we hit you with a couple of heavy questions in a row, but I know Aisha, after she wipes away the emotional water coming from her eyes, she likes to tone it down a bit. And she calls it the lightning round.
A little bit chill.
She calls it the lightning round. It's like a chilled round.
Okay.
So she's going to do that now for you.
Okay. So, are you ready? Okay.
This is rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
Yes.
Okay.
So basically it's the lightning round. So you, I ask you to complete a sentence and you just go with whatever comes to mind first. Ready? Okay. Allah is?
Ar-Rahman.
Love is?
Allah.
The world needs?
The world needs love.
Happiness is?
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Success is?
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Being a Muslim to you means?
Sure. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Leadership is?
Serving.
Islam for you is?
Living.
Okay. Do you have any mentors?
Ooh, as in like formal mentor, like this is
Like any mentor throughout your life, throughout, like you feel who got you here,
Yes.
continue to inspire you.
Yes. First and foremost, my parents, amazing people. Let's not get emotional, but they're amazing. Alhamdulillah, I've always been a support structure pillar. To this day, I always ask them. They have been my biggest mentors more often than not. However, there have been numerous people really in my life, people that know me, that I know that I've met, and people I've never met in my life who I'm hoping to meet. Some people have passed on, but for me, I think I learn from everybody that I engage with, that I interact with. I learn something new from every single person that I engage with. My teachers have played a huge role. My appas, my maulanas, my mualimas, the shuyukh, my friends, my family. I think to start mentioning names would be an injustice, really. They've been amazing mentors. I am on the lookout for a mentor, though. I've always been struggling with that, but it's just not been working out. Yeah. Inshallah, Nika.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I like asking our guests this question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received from anybody?
Okay. Okay, the first thing that I just my mom once said to me, second year campus is rough, and you have those low moments, and I just felt just so tired. And my mom said, never change, never change who you are just because of how people treat you. So how you engage with somebody should never be reflecting to be like, oh, I only be nice to people who are nice to me. No, if you're going to be, and let me not use the word nice, because nice is yeah, it's a tricky word, but essentially, yeah, just simply be project goodness, and in your interaction, do so with goodness regardless, because who are you doing it for? Because as a Muslim, again, always go back to that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's that. That is not my how somebody treats me and how somebody reacts to me is not my responsibility. I shouldn't take it personally. It's not on me. You just make dua for them. Yeah.
What are you most grateful for today?
Today.
Yeah. Besides being on our podcast.
Alright. Wow, today I had a phenomenal day. I think. Can I just go into whatever happened today?
You're grateful, not our
Alright,
grateful.
so one of my close friends, Dilshad Baks, she's currently a positive psychology student at Northwest University. She's doing her master's there, and she was gracious enough to ask me to facilitate a workshop that she was doing today on positive psychology, working with a group of women called the Power Mom Club at Delft that work with Dr. Frans Kalkweg there. And I met this amazing group of moms, amazing group of women who just blew me away with their ability to be vulnerable in their journey of motherhood and themselves. Being able they've never met me, but they were brave enough to just talk to me about how their journey as an individual of, like, just because their netness didn't necessarily come from homes that were nurturing, and they weren't loved, and they didn't love themselves, and how they only realized after they had kids, and they realized that they had troubled relationship with their children, that they had to introspect and change who they were. Just that braveness and the ability for them to come out of that, to say, I'm going to be a better person, I'm going to love myself more, and so that I can be a better parent to my child. That really blew me away, and I think it's definitely been a highlight for myself today. Yeah, this morning just blew my mind. And
Beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful.
Do you have a favorite ayah or Islamic story or anything?
My favorite surah is Ar-Rahman. It just always ayahs are tricky, depends on the moment. I think for me, just all of it, any ayah will speak to you depending on where you are and what you're going through. But in terms of surahs, I think I'll just narrow it down. The best I can do is surahs Ar-Rahman. For me, Ar-Rahman really, it has often helped me in terms of my engagement with myself, with others, and even in terms of how my relationship is with Allah, first and foremost. So yeah, it's just so many lessons to learn of gratitude, of constant reminder of Allah, is that we're all sinners, all of us, we're all just trying, and sometimes you can feel to just point and be like, why am I going to this musalla? I feel like a hypocrite. But I'm constantly reminded that if for as long as I have breath, I'm drawing breath, Allah will always be there to forgive me, and there's always a second chance and a third chance, and there's always a new chance. So yeah.
You can do it.
Okay. Okay, so
I don't know this question. I thought you were doing the last question.
Okay, yeah. So I think we're gonna die off.
Okay.
But just as the final question, if this was your last piece of advice or final words, what did that be to everyone listening?
Okay. My last piece of advice would be, find your why in life. That is so important. Your why isn't your career. Let's get that straight. Your why isn't even necessarily your role, and a lot of women can do this, motherhood and so forth. It's amazing. It's something to admire. But as a human being, what is your why? I think it's important to find that, and continue learning about yourself. Confront who you are, and as a Muslim, your why cannot not be tied in to Allah and His Rasul. It cannot. So you know, in the words of what led me to my journey now, I was watching a YouTube video and I was told that I was, you know, when I heard a sheikh was asked, how do you feel every time you say the name Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it changed my life. It just used to be a word. I never felt love in my heart. I never felt it. You just use this word, and for us, until you feel that love, until it becomes a thing, continue seeking that. And that is, for me, that's my why. So yeah, find your why.
Sure. Zainab,
That's amazing.
thank you, Chirwa. We still don't know why we invited you this evening. Thank you for your time.
So much for
Thank you for honoring our invite, and keep us in your du'as.
Amen.
All the best
Please
to
remember
you
me,
and
yes.
your projects, and yeah, go Zambia.
Go Africa.
Beautiful, mashallah.